So, as you may know, the world is already becoming locked in a AI race towards God knows what. It's kind of like the space race, except instead of between countries, it's between corporations. And maybe it's a little more like the arms race, because there's no telling what kind of demon will be unleashing if we do actually manage to create something far more intelligent than ourselves in the next few years. But while that's going on, there's also been this trend towards small language models, which can be so small that they can run on consumer hardware. I even could run something on my 4 gigabyte laptop, and it was a pretty good model too. So this shift is happening partly just because of the AI race, where once anyone does anything really cool, everyone else has to try to do it better. And someone made a model that was surprisingly good and surprisingly small, and then everyone else had to see like if they could do it. And what they found is if you take basically these AI models are like brains because they're these binary files that basically just represent layers of neurons, virtual neurons. And these neurons all have some small little number, a little, they call it a weight, but it's just some little number and some little calculation. And all these things are like parameters. The way they've made the structure of the program and the infrastructure of how they're making these AI models now is that they just call it parameters, and they're all these little numbers, and that is the brain basically. And you can have billions of parameters, and the more billions of parameters you have, the more intelligent it seems to get, as long as it has good data sets. But what they found is it's surprisingly easy to shrink them down. Once you've made it really big and really smart, you can shrink it down by just shaving the bits down. Like, say, you have an 8-bit number, and then you kind of average it out into a 4-bit representation or something. That would cut the model way down. Then they also have methods of prioritizing certain neurons in a way, and it's basically like synaptic pruning, which would get rid of the more unnecessary parameters and make the model even smaller. So now you have these models, these language models that can run pretty decent on consumer hardware. So there's this crazy shift that could happen where even though there's like this AI gold rush for like this amazing I think that's just almost a smokescreen to give the government or someone or the corporate world some excuse to just keep trying to build some grand super artificial intelligence that can, help them do something stupid like create the next atom bomb. But for most people, what they're using AI for is trying to get something that they can get actually out of these small language models now. Because if you think about it, the one thing AI is not good at is being accurate. So there are a lot of things that, I've played with AI a bit. There are some useful things you can do with it. One of the most useful things I've found is just bouncing ideas off of it. Another thing is people say, oh, you can't ask it a good question because it will just hallucinate a fake answer. But if you tell it stuff, like during the conversation, you give it all the information of what you're thinking about, then it has all that information from that one conversation anyways. And that's where these small language models shine, even in a world of large language models. Because no matter how large the language model and no matter how intelligent, it's still likely to hallucinate answers and mess things up, and you have to go through and edit it if you want anything decent anyway. But with the small language models, you can do something where you take bits of information and put it into the conversation. So just like you can give it the information during the conversation, you can also just sort of artificially insert a conversation that it will have in its immediate memory. that will hold the relevant information for the conversation. And then it will be very accurate with that information. For instance, if I had a question about a tiger, I could have the model just draw up the entire text of the Wikipedia for tiger and then have that in its short-term memory and then answer my question. And the fact that that is pretty, if you combine the small models with these short-term memory tricks, like, and keep in mind the entire offline copy of Wikipedia, if you take out the images, is something like 8 gigabytes, maybe 16 gigabytes. So it wouldn't be too hard to even have the whole copy of Wikipedia offline and have your question automatically. You could use an even smaller language model to look at the question and scan it for like interesting words that stand out, that seem like what you're trying to ask the question about, and automatically draw up related Wikipedia articles. And these kinds of systems are already been built and they're being built, and I just think that the very user-friendly ones aren't quite ready yet, but that's just because these models only came out like 2 months ago, some of the decent ones. So what we have there happening possibly is a radical shift in power, where I thought that with AI running the world through the internet, AI was running algorithm. I mean, it is still. AI is running the algorithms behind Google, behind the related videos on YouTube. It's deciding which images come up on Instagram. AI is already running all of these things before we even invented large language models, because it didn't need to read and write to do that. All it needed to do is learn what keeps your attention on the screen and do, it basically does what's called A/B testing, where it'll test one thing and test another thing on massive audiences, and then they'll just do the one that works. And it can do that automatically with the AI they have programmed into it, which is what's so dangerous about AI. They don't even know what it's doing. It's just going to figure out how to keep people on the screen longer no matter what. So for instance, they had one study that showed if people are talking with more depressed words and Facebook can tell they're depressed, it will actually advertise makeup more the more depressed they are, because it thinks that they'll be more compulsively buying things to try to feel better about themselves. The weird thing about that is it's removing the human intention from everything. So they can say, our hands are clean, we didn't know it was doing that. We didn't know it was advertising makeup when you get depressed. We just gave it all the inputs that exist and told it, go and do it. Do whatever it takes to keep people on the screen. So obviously it's going to do stuff like that. But they can say, well, we didn't know that wasn't our intention. All we did was this weird abstract thing in the background. So while AI has already been running the world into the ground, this shift to small language models has been so rapidly approaching. It's crazy because now I can just take a Raspberry Pi, put an offline copy of Wikipedia on it, make a system that can draw up the right Wikipedia article when I ask the right question, or just manually select with a little search thing before you ask the question. And then you have like an accurate AI running on your own little device. You don't even need the internet to answer your questions anymore. Ideally, I would also have like an entire copy of WikiHow on there somehow. And then of course my own notes file. I would just have my own notes, and then it could load your notes into its brain to answer questions, like maybe organized by hashtags or something. And then all these big internet corporations that are controlling our lives are starting to seem really insignificant to me. I can also see a possible shift in just the monopoly of the types of programs we use and the types of ways we transfer information. Because if you think about it, Facebook, YouTube, all these things, they're just formats of exchanging information, just like email or something. And the different formats get us into sort of a different way of communicating, but there's the medium and the format. It's kind of the same thing, but a video format, they call it. So let's call it a format. The format is the video. That's the format. We record it, we want to share it with friends. But the medium is like YouTube. And the algorithms, the AI algorithms, the related videos things, all these things are all pulling puppet strings in the background with AI just to try to make people watch whatever will keep them watching other videos. And that's such a weird thing to have an AI figuring out the perfect way to keep people watching videos, because it almost seems like it will keep you unsatisfied or have videos that tend towards making you feel like you don't want to go outside, and all kinds of weird unintended consequences can happen from that. But a lot of these websites, almost any website, any social media, anything, is basically just, text, video, pictures being sent back and forth. The only reason we even need websites as this like medium is because you need to sort of limit the gathering or organize it somehow, and you need some sort of agreed upon format to transfer the information. But if the agreed upon format was like decentralized to the point of everyone just has their own, like this is what the federated internet is supposed to be like. I'm getting way off of small models, aren't I? But the federated internet mostly still relies on servers, and even that is mostly just a product of how the internet was originally created and how the first protocols were created to have central servers. And now you have like WebSockets in browsers, and some browsers don't support it, and there's all these reasons why it's not that easy to just send information to someone. You have to choose how to send the information. Is it an email? Is it a text message? And granted, all of these, regardless of how they've been manipulated by tech companies behind the scenes, they'll still have their different cultural understanding of how we use them. But being locked into these companies that are controlling it and like making the entire narrative of the world change because we're all looking at the same website just because we want to exchange videos, and we don't want to send them directly to each other because that's just annoying, because then your phone gets full, and no doubt they made phones have very little storage on purpose, at least the companies who are profiting from the cloud and everything. But my point here, coming back to small models, is that they are starting to make even a small models that have, like Microsoft made the Phi 3 Vision, which is a small model that can scan an image and know what's on it and describe what's on it. I'm not sure how good it is, I haven't tried it, but in theory, these could get good even with small models. And that's interesting because it sort of makes this age-old problem of trying to choose the format that things transfer, that is sort of fading away as we have this technology to a lot of people now are starting to get stuff where they can just take a screenshot, grab the text straight from the image, and now you have the text. You could put it in your notes or something. So imagine a world where I could just take a picture of your phone and it'll have that text in my notes in the format I want. But then that means we could also just get something like a microcontroller or a single board computer or like a Raspberry Pi or something. And we can just put the AI on there, put a little camera on it. We can transfer information with, if it has a screen and a camera, then it can see and it can display. And then if I have one and you have one, I can grab anything in any format from your phone into my phone in any format I want, just by taking a picture of what's on your screen when you show me. So at that point, there is no medium we even need anymore, in a sense. like the mediums that we've been trapped in could break down to the point that it's just from person to person, and then there's always going to be structures to it probably, but the structures won't feel so rigid. It won't be like, I won't be like, I can't copy this off here into there, and it'll be easier for information to talk to each other. Like I could have my notes file with every thought I've ever had in this brain, and you could have your notes file with every thought you've ever had stacking up in there, like a few megabytes, or whatever. And then we could have a subject like that we each have a hashtag for, like maybe you put electronics and I put devices, but regardless, I could take all those hashtag devices, that is what I have electronics labeled as, and you take all your electronics as is, and I make an AI with those that's like my AI that specializes in those notes, and you make an AI that specializes in those notes, and we have our AI talk to each other, and then later you talk to the AI and it tells you the most interesting stuff. I mean, this is like a weird example. I'm not trying to say this will replace human interaction. I'm just saying, like, it has this capacity to make the transfer of information very efficient, tailoring how much detail we want and stuff like that, how much we want to share. All these things can become very borderless soon, and I'm hoping that will mean we'll all be a lot less reliant on these corporations that made them to begin with, ironically. And this whole idea of like being trapped in the matrix and this AI that's going to take over the world and the corporations and the government. It's like, hey guys, we can escape that whole mess if we do this right. We already have the technology. We just have to do it. We made this mistake before with Linux. Everyone either went on Windows or Apple, and Linux was there for you and you just ignored it. And this is what's happening now. It's like small models are out there, they're open source. We can make a digital infrastructure totally outside of the surveillance state, outside of any corporate puppet strings, that's just efficiently transferring information. And and then at that point it's like we've all become, I mean, it is a little bit like becoming the Borg, but it's like we're all a neuron in the brain, but we're not plugged into each other or something weird like that. So I feel like it's just a little bit more of like what the internet already is. But I think it could be a lot better because the narrative won't be controlled, and it could be what the internet was always supposed to be. At least that's my hope. All right, hopefully that makes sense, that these small models are interesting development, and there's a lot of possibility right now. And although they're trying to like make this nuclear bomb AI thing, we should just focus on getting, in my opinion, circumventing this whole thing and not giving them any justification for what they're doing, and just making AI work for us without feeding into their machine. All right, thanks for listening.